As you know, I created these models in my last video. Now let's get the materials that we're going to use to create the actual diorama. First I started with an 8x10 Lexan base, some plaster of Paris, air dry putty, resin, paint, some trees and landscaping, most of which I got down at Hobby Lobby. Let's remind ourselves of just a couple of points. In the Kinkuki-Ji, the actual viewing deck is built right over the pond itself. And in the pond, you've got several large islands. Now let's take a quick look at the Yomeimon and remind ourselves of a couple of items there. The Yomeimon gate, of course, is in a heavily wooded area and it's obviously on a sloping site. You can see that this inward facing area is at least 15 feet or so above ground level at the side. Started the diorama by creating the outline on the Lexan plate. I was going to put the Kinkuki-Ji here, and this is going to be the pond. You can actually see the islands, which represent the actual islands you've just seen. Here, at a slightly higher elevation, is going to go the Yomeimon gate. And to elevate the Yomeimon gate to reflect the 15 feet or so above ground level, I've got this extra plinth. The first real step, having created the base and let everything dry, was to apply a surface primer to everything, including, of course, the raised plaster of Paris plinth. You see here the model does not yet have the surface primer applied, and that will take at least 24 hours to dry. The next step on the right was to add the resin with brown pigment for the Kinkuki-Ji base, and of course to actually put the plinth in place. Remember, this is my very first diorama, so I'm just using pure guesswork, and I know you experts will have done this very differently. Now the next step was to paint the pond base darker as you got towards the deeper areas, and then of course to paint the land, and it was a mix of light green, dark green and some greys. And then I poured in the pond resin that had a light blue pigment and added reeds to the edges and sprinkled some grass on the land. Now you can see with the Kinkuki-Ji, I actually started to paint the corner area where the viewing deck was actually overlooking and built onto the water itself. Now it's not perfect, I know, but with a flat base, with the Kinkuki-Ji model, there's not a whole lot one can do. And the last steps were to add some trees, sprinkle on some grass, and paint a few rocks. And then, of course, to add some nano lighting by Woodland Scenics. Don't you like the reflections on the pond? I think they're lovely.